Ethan Cole lived alone in a small workshop at the edge of Port Ardent, a busy hub for ships coming from all corners of the galaxy. The air around his workshop always smelled like metal and oil, mixed with the faint scent of burned circuits. He liked it that way. It meant work, and work meant peace. Ethan was not the kind of man who looked for excitement. He liked to fix things, old things that no one else cared about. Machines were simple. They broke, he fixed them, and that was the end of the story. One evening, the day had almost ended. The suns above Port Ardent were dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in orange and blue. Ethan was closing his workshop when the small chime on the door rang. A little alien child, with soft blue skin and big golden eyes, stood there. The child looked nervous, clutching something tightly in his small hands. "Mister, can you fix this?" the child asked in a soft, trembling voice. Ethan knelt down to look. The object in the child's hands was a toy, a dragon, but unlike any he had seen. It was made of smooth silver scales that shimmered even in dim light. Its wings were torn, one eye dark, the other faintly glowing red. "Looks like you've got yourself a tough break here," Ethan said kindly. "Where did you get it?" The child hesitated, glancing around. "It was my friend's. He said it can fly and talk. But it broke, and now it doesn't do anything." Ethan smiled. "I can take a look at it. Might take a few days." The child nodded and placed the toy carefully on the workbench. Before Ethan could ask any more questions, the child hurried away into the streets. The door closed behind him, leaving the workshop quiet again. Ethan turned the toy over in his hands. It was light but solid, built with materials he didn't recognize. The craftsmanship was unlike anything from human worlds. He opened the back panel with care, expecting to see some kind of simple energy coil or microchip. Instead, he found a complex web of crystal wiring that pulsed faintly like it was alive. "What in the world?" he muttered. He fetched his magnifier and tools, working slowly. The inner circuits were burned in places, probably the reason it had stopped working. Still, the design was strange. It didn't follow any engineering logic he knew. It was like someone had built it half with science, half with art. There was a soft hum from within, as if something deep inside the toy was still awake. Ethan stayed up late, repairing broken joints and soldering the thin crystal lines. He didn't know why he cared so much. Maybe it was the challenge. Or maybe there was something about the toy's eyes. Even darkened, they seemed to be watching him. By midnight, he had done all he could. He sat back in his chair, rubbing his tired eyes. The dragon toy sat on the bench, whole again. He smiled slightly. "There you go, little guy. All fixed." He reached to test the power switch, but before he could touch it, the toy moved on its own. A soft whir filled the air. Its eyes lit up, not red, but a deep, bright gold. Ethan froze. The toy's mouth opened slightly, and a quiet, musical sound came out, like a whisper in an unknown tongue. Then its wings twitched and spread wide, the torn parts mending themselves in a ripple of light. Ethan stepped back, staring. The toy rose slowly from the workbench, hovering a few inches above it. A tiny breeze stirred around it. The light from its body shimmered across the walls of the workshop, casting moving patterns that looked almost alive, like stars or perhaps maps. "Okay, that's new," Ethan said under his breath. The toy turned its head toward him, and for a moment, he could have sworn its eyes focused on his face. Then, just as suddenly, the light faded. The toy dropped softly onto the table, still and silent again. Ethan stood there for a long time, listening to the faint ticking of his workshop clock. He rubbed the back of his neck and exhaled slowly. "Guess you weren't just a toy after all," he murmured. Outside, the night deepened. Ships passed in the distance, their engines humming across the sky. Ethan placed the dragon toy carefully on a shelf near his workbench. Something about it made him uneasy and curious. He decided to find the child in the morning and ask more questions. But as he turned off the lights and went upstairs to his small room, he didn't notice the faint golden glow that flickered from the toy's eyes again. Nor did he hear the soft hum that pulsed once, as if sending a signal far, far away into the dark of space. Ethan woke early the next morning, his thoughts still on the strange toy. The memory of the glowing eyes and floating dragon filled his mind like a dream that refused to fade. He poured himself a cup of coffee and went downstairs to the workshop, half expecting to find everything normal again. But as soon as he opened the door, he stopped. The dragon toy was no longer on the shelf where he had left it. Instead, it was sitting on the workbench, wings neatly folded, eyes dim but faintly glowing gold. Ethan frowned and looked around. No one had broken in and the locks were still sealed. The toy had somehow moved on its own. He walked closer and studied it. It looked harmless, almost beautiful. The silver scales shimmered in the morning light. Carefully, he reached out and touched its head. The toy's eyes brightened for a second, and a soft sound echoed in the air. A short series of tones, almost like a greeting. "All right," Ethan whispered. "So you're alive or something close to it." He sat down and began checking the circuits again, though his tools seemed useless now. Every time he scanned the toy, his instruments malfunctioned. The readings made no sense, the power levels were off the charts for something this small. There was no clear power source, no core, nothing he could identify. Then the toy lifted slightly again, hovering just an inch above the table. This time, light filled the room. Holographic shapes burst from its chest, lines and stars forming a vast, shifting map in midair. Ethan leaned back, eyes wide. The display was huge, covering the whole wall. He saw constellations he didn't recognize, planets orbiting twin suns, and strange symbols pulsing like coordinates. He quickly grabbed his recorder and took a snapshot. "What are you showing me?" he said softly. The toy made another sound, longer this time, like a voice speaking through music. Ethan didn't understand the words, but somehow he felt meaning behind them, a sense of sadness and distance. The dragon's eyes dimmed again, and the projection slowly faded until only the soft hum of his workshop remained. Ethan sat there in silence for several minutes, trying to calm his thoughts. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't a toy built for a child. It was a message or a memory, maybe even both. He checked the door, wondering again about the blue-skinned child who had left it here. Maybe that kid wasn't just any visitor. Maybe the toy was given to him for a reason. He needed answers. Ethan grabbed his jacket and stepped out into the streets of Port Ardent. The city was alive with noise. Ships landing and taking off, traders shouting, droids gliding through the crowd. He moved through the busy market area, asking vendors and workers if they had seen the alien child. Most shook their heads. A few mentioned that ships from the outer rim had docked last night, carrying refugees. After hours of searching, he gave up. The child was gone. When he returned to the workshop that evening, something felt off. The door was slightly open, and the lights were already on. He reached for his wrench, just in case, and stepped inside. A woman stood near his workbench, studying the dragon toy with calm curiosity. She was tall, wearing a dark coat, her eyes sharp but unreadable. "Can I help you?" Ethan asked cautiously. The woman turned slowly and smiled. "I'm sorry to intrude. My name is Mara. I'm an art collector. I heard you fixed something unusual." Ethan glanced at the toy, then back at her. "If you're here to buy it, it's not for sale." Mara tilted her head slightly, as if amused. "I'm not here to buy. I'm here to warn you. That thing doesn't belong here. It's dangerous." Ethan frowned. "It's just a toy. Broken, then fixed. That's all." "Then tell me," Mara said softly, "why did your workshop send a signal that reached across 3 sectors of space last night?" Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "Signal?" She nodded. "The moment you reactivated it, something old woke up out there. You fixed more than you think." Before Ethan could respond, a loud hum filled the air. The lights flickered. Both of them turned toward the window. Far above the city, bright streaks of silver crossed the sky, ships descending fast. Not civilian ones. Military. Mara looked back at Ethan. "They found it. And now they'll find you." Ethan stood frozen as the dragon toy stirred again, its golden eyes glowing brighter than before. For a second, he thought he saw fear in its expression, if such a thing was even possible. Outside, alarms began to sound across Port Ardent, and the night sky turned red with warning lights. Ethan stood at the window, watching the streaks of silver light descend through the sky. The air outside Port Ardent began to vibrate with the distant hum of engines. He didn't know who those ships belonged to, but the way Mara's expression had hardened told him it wasn't good news. She moved quickly to the door and locked it, her every motion calm and practiced. "We don't have much time," she said. "They'll scan the city and track the signal source. That means this workshop." Ethan looked at her with confusion and fear. "Who are they?" "Collectors. Enforcers. Depends on who you ask," Mara replied, glancing toward the toy. "They work for the Imperial Archive. They gather lost relics, especially ones that were never meant to be found again." Ethan's eyes flicked toward the small dragon on the table. Seems so harmless now, lying still and quiet. "You're telling me they're coming for that toy?" "It's not a toy," she said sharply. "It's a memory core, something ancient. And the last time someone activated one, an entire colony vanished." Ethan swallowed hard. "Then why didn't you take it already?" "Because I don't work for them," she said. "I'm here to make sure they don't get it." Before Ethan could respond, the workshop lights flickered again. A deep hum filled the air, low and rhythmic, like the beating of wings. The toy's eyes glowed softly, and the air around it shimmered. A faint blue projection spread across the walls, symbols and flowing shapes that pulsed in rhythm with the sound. Mara stared at it, her face tense. "It's trying to hide. It knows they're coming." Ethan blinked. "It knows?" "Yes," she whispered. "And it's scared." He stepped closer to the projection, trying to make sense of the strange images. They looked like stars arranged in patterns, but there were also outlines of dragons, huge, winged shapes circling planets and glowing suns. In the center of it all was a symbol, a ring of fire wrapped around a single eye. Before he could study it further, a loud knock shook the workshop door. Mara raised a hand. "Don't answer." The knock came again, harder this time, followed by a metallic voice outside. Mechanic Ethan Cole, by order of the Imperial Archive, opened the door immediately. Ethan froze. His mind raced. He looked at Mara, who was already pulling a small device from her coat. It looked like a handheld scanner, but the front end hummed with energy. "They've traced it faster than I thought," she muttered. "We have to move." "Move where?" Ethan asked. "They'll see us the moment we go outside." "Then we don't go outside," Mara said. She pointed to the floor hatch near the corner of the room. "You have maintenance tunnels under this place, right?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah, but they lead toward the docks." "Perfect," Mara said, grabbing the dragon toy and placing it gently inside her satchel. "We'll take it and find a way out through the lower levels." The pounding on the door grew louder, metal bending under the force. Ethan's heart raced as he grabbed his toolkit and flashlight. He opened the hatch and climbed down, the air below cool and damp. Mara followed, closing the hatch just as the front door shattered above them. They moved through the narrow tunnels, their footsteps echoing softly. Overhead, they could hear voices, shouted commands, the crash of machinery. Ethan could feel the vibration of boots and heavy scanners sweeping across the workshop. "What do they want with it?" Ethan whispered. "The Empire destroyed a species centuries ago," Mara said quietly. "Dragons, or what they used to be. Intelligent, powerful, and capable of storing memories through light and sound. The toy you fixed, it's the last fragment of them. The archive wants to erase it completely." Ethan's breath caught. "You mean, this thing's alive?" "In a way," Mara said. "It remembers everything its kind saw. Planets, wars, the rise and fall of empires. It's history itself." They reached a junction where the tunnels split. Mara stopped to check her scanner, then motioned left. "This way. The docks connect to the old service bays. We can hide there until nightfall." As they walked, Ethan kept glancing at the satchel. He could hear the faint hum of the dragon toy inside, like a heartbeat. It was almost comforting, even as fear pressed down on him. He didn't understand why he felt so protective of it, but he couldn't shake the feeling that fixing it had somehow tied their fates together. When they finally reached the lower bay entrance, Mara stopped. She looked tired now, her expression softening for the first time. "You didn't have to help," she said quietly. "You could have handed it over and walked away." Ethan shook his head. "I fix broken things. That's what I do. And I'm not about to let them break this one again." Mara gave a faint smile. "Then you just made yourself part of something much bigger than you can imagine." Above them, the faint echo of engines rumbled again. The ships were still circling. Somewhere up there, scanners searched for a small, glowing signal that refused to die. Ethan took a deep breath and followed Mara into the shadows, unaware that the dragon toy's eyes had opened once more, glowing softly through the fabric of her satchel. Watching, waiting, and remembering. Hours passed as Ethan and Mara hid in the lower levels of Port Ardent. The tunnels were cold, dimly lit by old maintenance lights that flickered every few seconds. The sound of distant engines echoed faintly from above, a reminder that the Empire's search still continued. Ethan sat against the wall, his hands covered in dust and grease, while Mara stood nearby, checking the small device on her wrist every few minutes. The dragon toy rested on the floor between them. It looked peaceful now, as if it were asleep. The glow in its eyes had dimmed to a soft, pulsing light. Every few moments, it emitted a faint hum, steady and rhythmic, like breathing. Ethan couldn't stop staring at it. He had repaired hundreds of machines in his life, but never one that felt alive. He had questions piling up in his mind, but every time he looked at Mara, he could tell she wasn't ready to answer yet. Finally, he spoke. "You said it remembers things, memories of its kind. How's that even possible?" Mara glanced up. The dragons weren't just living creatures. They were created part organic, part energy, part machine. They built themselves to live forever by passing memories through time. Each dragon carried the knowledge of the ones before it. Ethan frowned. "So this one, it's got all of that inside it?" "Yes," she said quietly. "And more. This one carries something unique. A message they never got to send." Ethan's eyes widened slightly. "A message to who?" Mara hesitated. "To anyone who would listen. Maybe to warn us. Maybe to bring them back." The air around them seemed to shift then. The dragon toy stirred, lifting its head slightly. Its eyes flared with soft gold light, and a voice echoed through the tunnel. Not spoken, but felt inside their minds. Ethan gasped, clutching his head. The light spread across the tunnel walls, forming glowing shapes and symbols. Holographic waves of stars and planets filled the small space, moving like they were alive. "What's happening?" Ethan asked, shielding his eyes. "It's opening," Mara whispered. "It trusts you." The voice grew clearer. It wasn't a language Ethan could recognize, but somehow he understood the meaning. He saw flashes, worlds burning, dragons soaring through clouds of silver fire, and cities made of crystal torn apart by dark ships bearing the mark of the Empire. Then came silence and one final image. A group of dragons surrounding a single sphere of light. They whispered something and sealed it away. When the light faded, the toy collapsed back onto the ground, its glow fading once more. Ethan knelt beside it, breathing heavily. "It showed me things," he said. "A war. An entire civilization wiped out. They were trying to protect something." Mara nodded slowly. "Yes, that sphere of light, it's called a memory core. A part of their life essence. Each one carries knowledge, power, and a way to rebuild what was lost. The toy you fixed, it's more than just a vessel. It's a key." Ethan ran his hand across his face. "A key to what?" "To their return," she said softly. Ethan stared at her, stunned. "You mean, you think they can come back?" "If the data inside this core is complete, yes," she said. "They could rebuild themselves. The dragons could rise again." Ethan looked back at the toy. Seemed so small and fragile now. "And the Empire knows this?" Mara nodded grimly. "They were the ones who destroyed them in the first place. They feared the dragon's power, a power that came from balance, not control. The Empire thrives on control. They'll destroy every trace of it." Silence filled the tunnel for a while. Ethan felt the weight of it all pressing down on him. He had thought he was just fixing a toy. Now it seemed like he had reignited a forgotten war. Finally, he spoke again. So what now? We can't just sit here forever. Mara adjusted the satchel where the toy rested. There's one place we can go, she said. An old observatory on the edge of the system. It's hidden off every map. If we reach it, we can decode the full message without interference. Ethan frowned. And if the Empire finds us before that? She met his eyes. Then we make sure the message survives, even if we don't. Ethan nodded slowly. He didn't know why, but he trusted her. He picked up his toolkit, slung it over his shoulder, and gave the toy one last look. It seemed to pulse faintly again, as if acknowledging his decision. They left the tunnel quietly, emerging into the shadowed streets near the old freight docks. The air smelled of fuel and rust. In the distance, the night sky shimmered with the faint glow of ships searching. Somewhere out there, the Empire was closing in. But for the first time, Ethan didn't feel afraid. He felt a strange sense of purpose, a feeling that fixing this one broken thing might change more than he ever imagined. The night sky over Port Ardent burned with the glow of engines as ships swept across the horizon. Ethan and Mara crouched behind a stack of cargo crates near the freight docks, waiting for the patrols to pass. The air was thick with smoke and static, and every few minutes, a searchlight sliced through the darkness, hunting for any sign of movement. Ethan could hear the hum of his own heartbeat. The dragon toy was tucked safely inside Mara's satchel, its faint pulse of light hidden beneath the fabric. Every so often, it would hum softly, as if sensing the danger closing in around them. They're sweeping the area faster now, Mara whispered. We need to move before the next scan. Ethan nodded. Where to? She pointed toward an old cargo ship docked at the far end of the bay. The hull was scratched and dented, half its lights dead. That one, the Wayfarer. She's been decommissioned for years, but her engines still work. If we can get her off the ground, we'll have a chance. They waited until the searchlights moved away, then ran for the ship. The metallic ground echoed under their boots, every sound amplified in the quiet night. Mara reached the ship first, entered a code into the side hatch, and pulled Ethan inside. The door slid shut behind them with a hiss. Inside, the Wayfarer was dark and silent, the smell of rust and old oil filling the air. Ethan moved to the control deck and started checking the panels. She's old, but she'll fly, he said. Might need a minute to reroute power. Mara set the satchel on the console. The dragon toy stirred again, its eyes glowing faintly. Make it fast, she said, glancing out the viewport. They'll be on us any second. Ethan worked quickly, fingers moving across the dusty controls. The ship's engines coughed, then roared to life with a deep, shaking vibration. Lights flickered on across the cabin. Outside, alarms began to blare. They know, Mara said. Go! Ethan gripped the controls and pulled hard. The Wayfarer lifted slowly, rising off the platform. The air around them filled with streaks of red light as pulse fire from the pursuing ships tore past. The hull shuddered under the impact of a glancing hit. Hold on, Ethan shouted, pushing the engines to full power. The ship shot upward, flames trailing behind. The city below vanished in seconds as they broke through the atmosphere and into the endless dark of space. But there was no time to rest. 3 small fighters appeared behind them, closing fast. Mara strapped herself in beside him, eyes focused. They won't stop. They'll track the signal no matter where we go. Ethan gritted his teeth. Then we make it hard for them to follow. He pulled the ship into a sharp dive toward a nearby asteroid belt. The Wayfarer groaned under the pressure, metal creaking as they plunged into the field of spinning rocks. The asteroids were massive, tumbling in slow arcs across the void. Ethan weaved between them, dodging chunks of stone the size of houses. The fighters stayed close, their shots lighting up the darkness. Can this ship take much more? He shouted. Not for long, Mara called back. She opened the satchel and took out the dragon toy. It was glowing brighter now, its wings spreading slightly as if waking up. The air inside the cockpit began to vibrate. Ethan felt his hair stand on end. What's it doing? He asked. I don't know, Mara said, her voice tense, but I think it's trying to help. The toy floated gently into the air between them. Its eyes blazed gold, and beams of light shot out, striking the ship's display. Suddenly, dozens of red symbols appeared across the screen. Routes, calculations, and strange markings Ethan had never seen. It's showing us a path, he realized. Through the belt. Follow it, Mara shouted. Ethan steered according to the glowing lines on the display. The wayfarer twisted and turned, following impossible routes that seemed to lead them straight through solid rock. But every time, the asteroids drifted aside just in time to let them through. Behind them, the pursuing fighters weren't so lucky. Two smashed into debris, bursting into fire and fragments. The last fighter stayed close, firing wildly. A blast hit the rear engines, shaking the ship hard. Alarms screamed. Mara was thrown forward, hitting the console. Ethan steadied the controls. We're losing power. Before he could react, the Dragon toy released a burst of light that filled the entire cabin. The ship's systems flickered, then stabilized. The engines surged back to life, stronger than before. Ethan stared in shock. It's feeding power into the ship. The wayfarer shot forward, leaving the last fighter far behind. Within moments, they cleared the asteroid belt. The stars stretched before them, endless and quiet. Only the hum of the engines filled the silence. Mara exhaled and leaned back in her seat. We made it. Ethan looked at the Dragon toy hovering between them. Its light was fading again, but for the briefest moment, it looked almost proud. He smiled slightly. I guess we owe you one. Mara nodded, still watching it. It's guiding us somewhere. It wants us to keep going. Then we follow, Ethan said. Outside, the ship drifted past the last edges of the asteroid belt. Far in the distance, a faint glow shimmered, a cluster of stars forming what looked like a giant wing. The toy's eyes flickered as if recognizing it. The hum returned, soft but steady, like the heartbeat of something ancient awakening once more. The wayfarer drifted in silence through the dark stretch of space. The stars outside shimmered faintly, like distant candles flickering against a black ocean. Ethan sat at the control panel, the glow from the screens painting his face in pale blue. He hadn't slept in hours, maybe days, it was hard to tell anymore. Mara sat across from him, carefully examining the Dragon toy that floated just above her hands. Its wings were folded in, its glow dim but steady. It's been quiet since we left the asteroid field, she said softly. Do you think it's resting? Ethan glanced over. If it can think or feel, then maybe. Whatever it did back there must have drained it. He paused, then added, I keep wondering who made it, or what for. Mara nodded, brushing her fingers across the smooth surface of the toy. You saw the light patterns, right? The coordinates. Yeah, Ethan said, but they don't match anything in known charts. Wherever it's leading us, it's off the map. For a moment, they sat in silence, listening to the hum of the engines. Outside, a comet streaked past, leaving a faint silver trail. The Dragon toy pulsed once, then twice, as if sensing it. Ethan leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Did it just react to that? Mara nodded. It did, like it recognizes something. Ethan pulled up the ship scanners. Hold on. There's a signal coming from that direction. Weak, but definitely artificial. Could be a trap, Mara said. Could be an answer, Ethan replied and adjusted the ship's course. The wayfarer glided toward the signal. As they drew closer, the stars began to warp around a faint blue glow ahead, a shimmering distortion, like ripples in space itself. The Dragon toy's eyes flared to life, shining brighter than they ever had before. Mara stared. Ethan. It's reacting again. The toy floated up from her hands, spinning slowly. Its wings unfolded, and tiny beams of light extended outward, forming a circular pattern in midair. It was projecting something, a map intricate and alive, showing lines of energy that stretched across the galaxy. Ethan's jaw tightened. That's no toy. That's a key. A key to what? Mara whispered. Before Ethan could answer, the ship shook violently. A piercing alarm filled the cabin. He checked the sensors. 3 large vessels were emerging from the distortion ahead, sleek and silent, shaped like blades of black glass. Their hulls reflected no light. "They're not on any record," Ethan said, voice tight. "No transponders, no markings." The Dragon toy's light pulsed rapidly. The map it had projected began to shift, zooming in on one of the black ships. A new pattern appeared, symbols neither of them recognized, glowing in red. Mara frowned. "What does that mean?" Ethan didn't get the chance to answer. A beam of energy shot past the Wayfarer, grazing its hull. The impact sent them spinning. "Evasive!" he shouted, gripping the controls. The small ship twisted through the darkness as another beam tore by. The black vessels were fast, impossibly fast. They moved like predators. The Dragon toy suddenly flew to the control console, landing on the panel. Its eyes burned gold. "Ethan!" Mara yelled. "It's doing something again." The toy's wings spread, and the Wayfarer's entire system flared to life. Power surged through the engines. The ship accelerated beyond its limits, escaping the line of fire. The stars blurred into streaks of light. They shot through the distortion, into a space unlike anything they had ever seen. It wasn't empty. Before them stretched a vast field of colossal metallic shapes, structures the size of moons, floating in silent formation. They glowed faintly from within, pulsing with the same golden hue as the Dragon toy. Mara's mouth fell open. "Ethan, what is this place?" Ethan stared at the screen, his voice barely above a whisper. "It looks like a graveyard, but not of ships. These are creatures." The shapes looked like dragons, thousands of them, metallic and ancient, their forms half-fused with the void. They were sleeping, motionless, but their eyes shimmered faintly as if dreaming. The Dragon toy floated forward to the viewport, its glow matching theirs. Then it released a pulse of light that rippled through the entire field. Slowly, one of the enormous metallic dragons stirred. Its eyes opened, twin suns burning with golden fire. Ethan and Mara could only watch in awe and fear. The colossal creature moved its head slightly, and a voice, not heard, but felt, echoed through their minds. "Who carries the heart of the lost?" Ethan froze. Mara whispered, "It's talking to us." The toy turned toward them, glowing like a small star. Ethan took a breath. "We found it. We fixed it. But we don't understand." The voice responded, deep and calm like thunder across a distant sea. "You restored what was broken. You awaken what was hidden. The signal of destiny begins." The creature's eyes brightened, and suddenly, every dragon in the field began to stir. Light rippled through the void as thousands of golden eyes opened, filling space with a brilliance beyond imagination. Mara whispered, "Ethan, what did we just do?" He stared at the endless, glowing forms and felt a chill run through him. "I think," he said slowly, "we just woke them up." The vast silence of space trembled as the ancient dragons awakened. Their metallic scales reflected golden light across the void, creating a storm of brilliance that stretched for light years. Ethan shielded his eyes as the Wayfarer drifted among the colossal beings. The hum of energy filled the ship like a heartbeat that wasn't theirs. Mara stood frozen beside him. "They're alive," she whispered. "All of them." Ethan nodded slowly. "And they're looking at us." Outside, thousands of glowing eyes turned toward the small ship. The air seemed to vibrate with power. The Dragon toy floated before the viewport, glowing brighter than ever before. It pulsed once, twice, and then the nearest giant dragon lowered its head. Its enormous eyes filled the screen. A voice, deep and resonant, filled their minds again. "You carry the heart of our kind. Why have you awakened us, child of flesh and iron?" Ethan swallowed hard. "We didn't mean to. We just found this." He gestured toward the toy. "It was broken. I fixed it." The dragon's eyes flickered like distant stars. "You repaired what no one has touched for 10,000 cycles. That act carries weight." Mara looked from Ethan to the dragon. "What is this place? Who are you?" The voice replied with a heavy pause. We are the remnants, the guardians of the first flame. Long ago, our kind sealed ourselves here to protect the source of creation. This heart you hold was lost in the war that ended the Age of Light. Ethan frowned. War? What kind of war? The war that consumed the stars. The voice rumbled. The war between makers and destroyers. The words sent a chill through the cabin. The dragons around them began to move slowly, forming vast patterns in the void, like constellations shifting into order. From the center of their formation, a massive light began to grow. A blinding sphere of golden fire. Mara whispered. That must be the source they were protecting. Ethan stared. The heart of the first flame. He turned to Mara. This toy, it's not just a relic. It's a key to that. Before Mara could respond, alarms suddenly blared through the ship. The scanners lit up with red signals. Ethan's heart sank. We've got incoming. Dozens of ships, military class. Mara rushed to the console. How did they find us? Probably tracked the energy surge when the dragons woke, Ethan said grimly. They're coming fast. Outside, streaks of light appeared, sleek warships breaking through the veil of the star field. Their hulls bore the insignia of the Orion Dominion, the most feared fleet in the sector. Contact them, Mara said quickly. Tell them to stand down. If they fire. But it was too late. The Dominion ships opened fire, beams of plasma cutting across the void. The dragons roared not with sound, but with energy. Waves of golden light burst outward, blocking the attacks like shields of pure force. Ethan gripped the controls. We have to get out of their line of fire. But before he could move, the small dragon toy released another pulse. The Wayfarer was surrounded by a shimmering sphere of energy. The dragon's voice echoed again. Do not flee. Witness what was lost. The dragons began to move in unison, their golden wings spreading wide. Energy gathered between them, forming rivers of light that connected every one of their massive forms. The warships continued to fire, but their weapons dissolved into the radiance. Mara stared in disbelief. They're forming a barrier? Ethan nodded, eyes wide. No, it's more than that. It's a signal. The light from the dragons grew so bright that space itself seemed to bend. Then, from the heart of the glowing sphere, a colossal figure emerged. It wasn't a dragon. It was humanoid, formed from energy and light, its face calm and ancient. Its voice was everywhere and nowhere. Children of the void, it said, its tone echoing across eternity. The age of silence ends. The heart has been restored. The first flame shall burn once more. The Dominion ships halted, their weapons going dark. Even their systems seemed to falter in the overwhelming presence. Ethan felt tears sting his eyes. What is that? Mara's voice trembled. A guardian. Or maybe something older. The energy being looked toward them, its gaze piercing through the ship. You who mended what was broken, it said. You have reawakened the bond between worlds. The dragons will rise again, but the choice remains yours. Will you guide the flame, or let it consume? Ethan's throat tightened. I don't understand. You will, the being said gently. In time, the light began to fade. The dragon's eyes dimmed, and the being dissolved into 1,000 motes of gold. The Wayfarer drifted in silence once more, surrounded by the stillness of the cosmos. Mara exhaled shakily. Ethan, we just witnessed something impossible. He nodded slowly, looking at the dragon toy hovering before him. Impossible, yeah, but somehow, it feels like it's only the beginning. The toy pulsed faintly, its eyes glowing with quiet warmth, as if agreeing with him. Outside, far in the distance, the stars began to shift again, forming new constellations, shaped like dragons spreading their wings over the universe. The stars above shimmered like molten gold as the Wayfarer drifted quietly through the aftermath of light. The dragons had gone silent again, floating like colossal statues across the void. But the golden glow that had filled the galaxy still lingered, pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat that refused to fade. Ethan stood at the viewport, staring into that endless sea of light. His reflection looked older, worn by awe and fear and something close to reverence. Behind him, Mara was carefully packing what little they had gathered, the maps, the fragments of data, and of course, the small dragon toy that had changed everything. "It's still glowing," she said softly, watching it float above her hands. "But weaker now." Ethan turned toward her. "It's tired, just like us." Mara gave a small smile. "Do you think it's alive?" Ethan hesitated before answering. "I think it's more than alive. I think it remembers." The toy pulsed once, almost as if it understood. A soft chime echoed from its core, followed by a faint projection of light. A star map, similar to before, but this one was incomplete. Lines stretched out from their location, spreading toward a distant cluster marked with a single glowing symbol. Mara frowned. "Another destination?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Looks like it. Maybe that's where the flame began." Mara sighed, rubbing her temples. "We just barely survived the last one." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, but something tells me we're not done yet." Outside, the massive dragons began to shift again, their eyes flickering like distant suns. One of them, the largest of all, drifted closer. Its head moved slowly, filling the view with golden scales and endless light. Then the voice returned. Not loud, but soft, deep, and filled with meaning. "The heart has chosen its keepers. The path of flame continues." Mara and Ethan shared a glance. "Keepers?" she whispered. Ethan looked back at the glowing toy. "That's us." The dragon's eyes glowed brighter. "Your kind once fled from the fire, but now you bear it again. Protect it. The void remembers its guardians." Before they could respond, the dragon's wings unfolded. A wave of golden light spread outward, rippling through space. Each of the colossal dragons followed, spreading their wings in silent synchrony. The golden energy gathered once more, but this time it was not destructive. It formed a single beam that pointed toward the distant cluster marked on the toy's map. Mara's voice trembled. "They're showing us the way." Ethan nodded, his eyes fixed on the shimmering path. "Then that's where we go." The toy drifted toward the control panel, settling gently beside the navigation system. Its light merged with the ship's console, and for a moment, the wayfarer seemed to breathe. The engines hummed to life with renewed strength. Mara secured the straps on her seat. "You sure about this?" Ethan smiled slightly. "No, but it's what feels right." As the wayfarer turned toward the golden trail, the dragons bowed their heads in silence. The massive beings glowed brighter for a final time, as though blessing the small ship that carried their legacy. The energy around them began to fade, the dragons slowly returning to stillness. Ethan whispered, "Goodbye." The ship surged forward, leaving the graveyard of giants behind. The stars stretched into long lines as they entered faster than light travel, following the coordinates shown by the toy. For a while, there was only silence, the hum of engines and the quiet pulse of the glowing artifact. Then Mara spoke softly. "Ethan, what if this isn't the end? What if it's just the beginning of something bigger?" He smiled faintly. "Then we'll face it, together." As they traveled deeper into the unknown, the toy began to hum again. Its light grew stronger, steadier, more confident. The ship's readings started to flicker with strange symbols, and distant radio bursts whispered across the communication lines. Voices, maybe, or echoes of something ancient waking once more. The stars ahead brightened, forming a glowing passage of light, and the wayfarer plunged into it. Behind them, the galaxy shimmered faintly, the dragons' resting forms marking the birth of a new era. The flame had been restored, but for Ethan and Mara, the journey was far from over. Somewhere beyond the edge of known space, destiny waited, waiting for the keepers of the heart to return home.